Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this presentation on Unlocking Routing Efficiency, a customer success story with Pepin and Descartes, presented by Descartes. One quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So today we're going to explore how Pepin Distributing, a leading beverage distributor in Tampa, Florida, transformed its operations with the help of Descartes. Pepin Distributing saw the need to elevate its distribution processes to maintain its reputation for reliability and efficiency. By implementing Descartes' route execution and fleet performance management solution, Pepin gained full visibility into its fleet and field operations, enhanced operational efficiency, boosted productivity, and ensured its ability to meet service expectations. So let's learn how they did it. But before we get started with our presentation, I want to do a little poll so we can learn a little bit about our audience today. I've got a couple of questions for you, and I'd like you to choose the one that most applies to you. The first one is about fleet size. What is your current fleet size? 1 to 19, 20 to 99, or 100 plus? So we're going to take a moment while you fill in the bubble. I know you didn't expect a test, so I apologize for that, but it's an easy one. No wrong answer. So we're going to wait for a moment and see just what you guys are made up of these days. Okay, coming in now, the results. All right, 1 to 19 fleet size is 40% of today's audience. 0% for 20 to 99, and 60% for 100 units plus. Thank you very much for that. Now we have one additional question, again, just to learn a little bit more about you. We're going to bring it up now. This one is going to be about your service provider. Okay, here it is. Who is your current provider? Here are your choices: Descartes, Appian, Dispatch Track, Omnitrack Solera, Ortec, manual, meaning no system, or other. So here again, please pick one. Everybody ought to fit into at least one of those categories. And this will give us a good sense of where you are in terms of who you're partnering with for your own transportation and visibility needs. Okay, here we go. All right then, 40% of our audience today uses Descartes as their provider. We have 0% for Appian, Dispatch Track, Omnitrack Solera, and Ortec. We have 60% who are manual with no system, and we have nobody responding to the other category. Well, thank you very much, audience, for that. Really appreciate it. It gives us a little better sense of who you are. At this point, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Sydney Brandt is Vice President of Fleet Solutions at Descartes Systems Group, where she drives go-to-market strategy in routing, mobility, and telematics. With 23 years of experience in transportation technology, Sydney has specialized in optimizing last and final mile operations, dispatch and tracking, telematics and ELDs, video-based safety, and data analytics. Welcome, Sydney. John Barton is the Retail Service Manager for Pepin Distributing Company. With over 30 years of experience in the beverage industry, he works directly with all departments to foster productivity, operate efficiently, problem solve in difficult situations, turn around underperforming accounts, and serve as a liaison to better facilitate communication. Hi, John.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. And Nick Ryder is a senior account executive at Descartes, focusing on helping businesses, particularly beverage distributors, improve fleet efficiency and overcome last mile logistics challenges. With over 15 years of experience in the logistics and transportation industry, Nick joined Descartes through the Green Mile acquisition of 2021. Hello, Nick, and welcome once again to all of you. With that, I want to pass it over to Sydney, who's going to give us a little brief summary of Descartes. So, Sydney, take it away.
Thanks, Bob.
Descartes is the global leader in logistics technology. We have over 26,000 customers around the world. We have technology that spans from moving and managing raw materials to produce products to delivering products to the final consumers. But at our very core, we're a team of over 2,200 industry-leading logistics experts that are dedicated to providing and delivering innovative solutions while working closely with our customers to ensure their success. From a performance perspective, we've had 19 years of year-over-year record performance with a commitment to dedicate 15% of total revenue to research and development because we want to ensure that we continue to innovate. As we like to say, we're the people that unite technology and people that move the world.
Thank you very much for that, Sydney. Thanks for the introduction to Descartes. So I'm going to start on this panel portion of our presentation with a question for John. The first one is, please, John, tell us about Pepin Distributing. Who are you guys?
So we're a full-scale distributor. We sell about 11 million cases a year. We cover roughly 80 miles of territory. From a delivery aspect, we've got over 60 routes, 95 delivery personnel. Merchandising, we have over 46 routes, 51 personnel, and sales, about 50 plus sales, and line cleaners, over 7 line cleaners. So we deliver everything from beer, liquor, juice, soda, Nestle. We sell it all. So we try to get everything we can out there.
Thank you. And with a network and an outfit like that, I would imagine, John, that you have faced your fair share of challenges in this evolving landscape of beverage distribution. So I would appreciate it, perhaps, if you could share with us today how operational bottlenecks, particularly when it comes to routing and last mile logistics, have affected your ability to stay competitive, and how have these challenges reflected broader trends in the industry?
Absolutely. So we're delivering anywhere from 40 to 50,000 cases a day. We've got over 500 deliveries that we make. We've got 9 bulk, 9 side loader, 18 on premise, and special events as well. So routing for us is everything. It's key to what we do. And with merchandising as well, you really have to try to mitigate as many of those bottlenecks as you can. So, our accounts open. What are the dock times and receiving hours, traffic? Who can take you during lunch? There's so much that we have to do before we even start our day from a routing aspect, just to make sure everything gets delivered. And then it's also, how much can we put on the trucks? How many deliveries can we do? Who do we send it with? And then we have to get done at a certain time per DOT regulations. So everything we do is routing and time sensitive and case sensitive. So, we try to get rid of as many bottlenecks as we can.
Sounds so simple, John.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
It's amazing we do what we do every day.
That's right. Well, you don't have a boring job. I'm sure you come to work every day excited about how you can meet these challenges. So thank you very much for introducing us to Pepin. So Cindy, you obviously have extensive experience in last mile delivery. You've seen how visibility is absolutely critical for operational success. How do you think the challenges that John just talked about today around visibility and resource allocation, how do you think they compare with what you are seeing across the last mile sector? And that being the case, how can distributors generally leverage real-time visibility to improve their responsiveness and their agility? Sydney, I can't hear you. You are muted.
I think that John really pointed out here that there's a lot going on. There's an incredible amount of moving pieces inside and outside every distributor out there. And the key really comes down to visibility. What are people doing? Once you have visibility to these operational issues, you have the ability to improve them. And it's, not that something's wrong with them today, but we all know that we can always be better than good and make improvement on things. And if you use the right tools to capture and analyze the information, you're able to really be a change agent within your organization. This could be understanding that customer time windows need to be changed because you can always arrive 25 minutes earlier than the sales guy stated. It could be either increasing or decreasing delivery frequency based upon how much product somebody's ordering, or even modifying the route or the dryer to be more efficient. When I think about resource allocation, there's 2 things that I think about: equipment and personnel. two very important assets within our company. So, visibility to how the routes are actually being run by the driver, may identifying inefficiencies by using a specific driver or even a specific equipment type. Good software is going to let you model the routes with multiple drivers or multiple equipment types to understand what's the most efficient use of those assets, right? Mm-hmm. And we've seen there's even a trend now to move away from side loaders. So modeling equipment becomes even more important. What happens if we start to use more mini bulk versus side loaders or different pieces of equipment? With the personnel, we're also starting to see people change their models and move to chasers that arrive just in time to help merchandise versus riding along with the driver in the truck to help unload. Understanding the different models that you have and implementing different changes becomes critically important there. The last part of the question is really around responsiveness. I believe that visibility equals responsiveness. For example, what do you do when there's a blocked dock door by a competitor? If you have that visibility, and if the dispatcher and driver are communicating, there can be an easy reroute of stops that goes into that process.
Thank you. Nick, when it comes to beverage distribution, which is your specialty, real-time data is often seen as a major lever for efficiency. I won't say often, I say always seen as a major lever for efficiency. How are you seeing companies like Pepin harness the power of real-time insights, not just to streamline operations, but also to drive long-term strategic advantages? What trends do you see emerging in the industry around this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Bob. So what I would say is, the biggest lever that they're able to start to pull is to create basically that three-pronged approach of a data-centric mindset, right? So as John alluded to, you have your pre-sales environment, you have your delivery, and then you also have your merchandising team. And typically what we'll find is that information and data is not necessarily harnessed into one location, but it's very fragmented is what it is. So what's happening is that your delivery team is not understanding what's going on to what the delivery site is. So once this is enabled, they're able to actually start to track and harness this data to have factual conversations internally between all three departments. So instead of, I think, what happens is in the beverage distribution world, now they have I know type conversations because they're able to leverage that real-time data that's captured and then start to either make what I would say is proactive or reactive decisions to drive the operations for efficiencies. Typically what you'll find in this industry, right, in the beverage space, they don't have that harnessed collectively. So they may have some gaps within the actual operations of that day, right? Because you've got that day-to-day grind, you've got that day-to-day fight. No day's ever the same. But once you're able to start to capture this information and then start to report on it, you start to have factual-based conversations with the team on how you can lead better efficiencies within the operations. So as far as, trending, how are they leveraging this on a trend basis? They can use historical data to make better decisions, like what I would say is seasonality, right? So in John's case, Florida is a very seasonal operations. They have the snowbird season, and then they have kind of the off season, the summer season. Mm-hmm. So by leveraging the data, say let's use the snowbird season, they're able to build better routes and then also performance metrics for their operations is what they're able to do. And that goes for all beverage companies, right? I don't think that you'll ever find a beverage company that's flat across the board over the course of this year. So you really need to be able to leverage this real-time data capture and then performance management to be successful in your operations to drive better efficiencies, be it the sales team, the delivery team, or the merchandising team.
It seems like you're talking two different types of data: historical data, Nick, as you say, to help you build future decisions, as well as the data of the moment, which is where the real time comes in. So in other words, you really are dealing with two different levels, are you not?
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so John, cross-functional collaboration, that's what everybody talks about these days. In the same breath, they talk about real-time data in a distribution network. How has Pepin's use of real-time data improved collaboration between your logistics, your sales, your delivery teams, and what impact has that had on meeting customer service expectations in the highly competitive beverage industry?
So, I mean, communication is everything as far as the distributor goes. We have to be in constant visibility with each other. And from a delivery aspect, we've got 3 operational people, Sean, Brett, and Wade, who are constantly looking at real time where the trucks are, and they're monitoring if their guys are progressing forward or falling behind. And that helps us with merchandising. We know when the delivery was made. We know how many cases and what type of product. From a merchandising aspect, we can say, hey, this was delivered. It's there waiting for you. So we don't have merchandising waiting around because they're paid hourly. And the last thing we want is somebody waiting around to see where these trucks are. So our operation team is in constant communication with their team. We have 7 supervisors who are also monitoring all the time to see who needs help, who's falling behind. So in real time, we can send those people to get them working ahead so we don't fall behind. And then from merchandising, we have to know if those guys are falling behind as well. From a service aspect, the last thing you want is for 8 pallets to be in the back receiving area and no one working it. So for us, using the Green Mile and Descartes system, we can send people where the product has been delivered, or like Nick mentioned earlier, if we have to reroute a truck to a different stop because there's people in that back dock, now we can immediately change our routing and call that person and say, hey, forget about going to this store, go to that store. So for us, it's so key to have all this real-time information. And then also line cleaners. We have salespeople that will call and say, hey, I just left this account. There's an opportunity at this stop. He can see where that line cleaner is and call the person closest to him. So our supervisors, our managers, our operational team, we kind of have which is Jesus' view, which is we know where everyone is and what needs to get done, and we can see their progress and who's falling behind. And when you have so many different things happening, it's something that we have to have, and we focus on it every day and we train with it. And for us, it's such a great thing to have everyone working on the same page and being able to see what everyone else is doing. It's fundamental for us.
Wow, that is an amazing amount of agility that you seem to have built into your operation. That's a holy grail for so many companies of all industries, not just beverage, but especially beverage, to be able to turn on a dime and make those adjustments that you need to make at the moment. Well, let me follow up with that, John. We heard about how you adjusted your operations to meet current demand, like starting routes earlier to avoid congestion. How has this shift impacted productivity and employee engagement? Because that obviously is going to affect people. And what lessons can other distributors learn from Pepin's approach to these operational challenges?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the whole routing and everything. So obviously, the first to the dock gets the first delivery. And when you've got big chains like Walmart and Publix and Total Wine and what have you, if you're getting out of your warehouse early, you're getting to that dock first. So now you're not getting tied up with traffic, because everything in Florida is all about traffic, who gets there first. And then also you've got, receiving hours. The last thing you want to do is have 10 stops left and you're not able to get all your product off, because then it goes back out the next day. Now you're bottlenecking the next day. So it really is get out the gate first, get out there early. Also, if you're early, there's less customers in the store. So our merchandisers, they're able to take pallets out onto the floor. They're able to get done faster. There's less, Also, the other thing is for our warehouse. If we get the product off the trucks faster and earlier, then we also are able to start loading those trucks for later in the afternoon, that evening. So the earlier that we're able to do our job and get things done, it just makes everything easier down the line. And also, first in, first out.
But a lot of docks can be very tightly scheduled. So is it possible to be too early to show up at a dock when they can't take you because it's too soon? You've got somebody else there already. Is there a possibility of that?
Absolutely. And that's also the great thing with Green Mile and Descartes is we have the history of all of our accounts. So we know what time all these accounts are opening. We know all the receiving hours. We put that into our mix as far as routing goes. So when we're actually sitting and forecasting what we're going to do the next day, we know that the Walmart has to go first or the Public has to go first. And we can route our people based on receiving times, dock times, and then also like restaurants and bars. We know some bars don't open till 3, so we can route accordingly based on the history. And then also if we have guys covering routes, we can also look at the past history of how someone ran the route so that we know, okay, this is how you want to run it. Because not everything is geographical. In common sense, you would think, closest to furthest and then come back. But like you said, there are so many variables where not everything is going to be open. Not everything will receive you at a certain time. So you really have to look at your history and also plan for that. And our operational team does a great job of doing that.
Great. Because there's nothing that drivers hate more than showing up at a dock and being forced to wait.
Absolutely. It kills the whole process.
One of the big disincentives to being a driver is that kind of waiting around and nothing happening. Okay, Sydney, I apologize for wanting to keep hammering home this real-time data thing, but it just seems so important and so central to our discussion today. So let me ask you this. With fluctuating demand becoming the norm, maybe fluctuating, the word implies something different, but if it's always that way, that it does become the normal thing. How do you see real-time fleet data transforming resource allocation and workforce planning, especially in the context of last mile logistics? And you could talk about trends or innovations here as well related to food and beverage distribution. You are once again muted.
I really believe that real-time data is going to revolutionize resource allocation and workforce planning, especially in last mile logistics, right? We're in industries where demand volatility is heightened by consumer preferences, seasonality, and even external disruptions, right? I think there's 4 key areas where we're going to see changes. 1, dynamic routing and scheduling. 2, predictive analytics. 3, workforce optimization. And 4, customer digital engagement. So let me drill down a little bit into each one of those. Dynamic routing and scheduling. If we have real-time data and visibility, it's going to allow companies to adjust routes and delivery schedules almost instantly. And the other real-time information that comes into play here is really traffic, order changes, dock scheduling issues, delivery priority. We need to be able to have some dynamicness and be able to move stops around as routes execute. So that's going to be the first and foremost, right? And you need to have both the plan and the execution information to be able to make those decisions. The second is really around predictive analytics. So when I have real-time information I bring back into the system, I can then integrate historical data with those real-time insights to enable predictive modeling. And then we can start to predict and anticipate demand surges around events and different holidays or even weather events, so we can optimize both the fleet and workforce deployment. A good example might be that you might change your route of your territory in anticipation of a major event, right? Like the World Series or the Super Bowl. The third key area is really around workforce optimization. And I think that John really talked about this a little bit, which is, shifts could change. Your driver shift or your warehouse shifts, they could even dynamically shift a little bit based on the movement of delivery windows, minimizing idle time for drivers and the warehouse staff. So we start to look at our routes, and the sales team has said that, there's a specific set of time windows. Well, then the driver gets to know the sites and realize that those time windows start to change. That might mean that you can start that route 30 minutes earlier or an hour earlier or even 90 minutes earlier. So those shifts become a little bit more dynamic. Real-time tracking. We need to make sure we understand where the vehicle locations are so that customers can be alerted to deliveries in order to make sure that the right personnel are able to unload while minimizing disruptions at the customer sites. We're seeing less and less personnel in stores. So we want to make sure that we can let people know when the driver's going to be arriving so they can free up the appropriate employees to get to check in that merchandise.
It seems like with all this, I'm sorry, go ahead. Please finish your thought.
I was going to say, and the third component of that is really modeling equipment utilization. John, again, talked earlier about how many different pieces of equipment he has, but I can model utilization and also forward purchase planning. Like, what equipment do I want to purchase in the future? And I do that based on that actual route information, right? So when I collect that real-time information and bring it back in, now I start to understand what equipment do I need, how many people do I need, how many helpers or chasers do I need, both in the cab and out of the cab.
It seems like with all of this information at your fingertips now in a real-time environment, it seems like it's only a small step to go from predictive analytics to prescriptive analytics. In other words, telling you what is that not what we're going right now in this?
I think we're absolutely going that way, right? When
Yeah.
you think about all this information that you have, being able to say, hey, you should do this, or this is going to happen and you need to do this, becomes critically important. You start to, combine that with other large data sets from AI, and it's a huge impact to businesses. Using AI to quickly assess and scrub through all this data is going to be critically important.
I knew AI was going to come into this discussion at some point, especially when the word analytics shows up. AI is not far behind. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. John, as Pepin continues to evolve its distribution strategy, tell us about any future trends or innovations in fleet and last mile operations that you are most excited about. And how do you see Pepin positioning itself to stay ahead of the curve in this highly competitive food and beverage distribution landscape?
I mean, there's so much that we have left still to do with, Descartes and Green Mile. The amount of information that we get every day with service times and delivery times. And for me personally, I'm always looking at the data and figuring out, okay, what chain stores take us the longest to merchandise and deliver to? Who's faster with receiving? I'm looking every day for inefficiencies and trying to take us to the next level with routing. And it's not just that, it's also our personnel. Who's efficiently running their route? How many hours are they spending in on-premise accounts? Are they doing what they really need to do in accounts and being efficient? So I think for us, we've just really started to scrape as far as all the data that we have and what we can really do with it. Another thing we're using is we're looking at everyone's days and we're seeing, do we need to focus over in this territory more? Are we under-servicing? Are we over-servicing? Are we wasting time going out to different areas where we can really focus? Because as you know, like 20% of your account base does 80% of your volume. So what we're really looking at is, what do we do with the time that we have, the trucks that we have? How many deliveries can we get on the trucks, and what fleet do we use, and what's most efficient? We're going to a lot of mini bulk trucks now, so we can put more product. We're putting 2 people on those trucks so we can help better service the accounts, get in and get out. So there's a lot of things that we look at with our data as far as operations go and routing and so many key things that we can use just from the information we're getting. So I'm excited about where we're going with routing. I'm excited where we're going with all the data that we can get from, just looking at all the information coming in. It really is at sometimes overwhelming in what you can do with it. And I think we just started to begin as far as being efficient as a distribution company.
We can't underemphasize the idea of being on the good side of the retailers too.
Absolutely.
Showing up on time, showing up with the product that they want, because they can hit you with some pretty bad penalties for failing to adhere to their extremely strict criteria for serving them.
And not to cut you off, Bob, but it's actually funny because we'll have accounts, reach out or call us and say, hey, what time is the truck going to get here? What time is the merchandiser get here? And before, you would have to try to call everyone and it would take so much time. Now I can just pull up the computer and I say, oh, he's leaving the account next to you. He'll be there in 15 minutes because you know where he's at. You know what's scheduled. You know how many cases there are. I can even tell you the whole day for the driver and say, oh, he'll be there around 2 p.m. So that owner can go and do what he needs to do and come back. So our supervisors, they're able to answer all those questions. So, our delivery team, they're not able to be on the phone. They're not allowed to communicate while they're driving. So for us, it's you don't have to do so much now, the communication, because it's right there on your phone. So for us, that's golden. So if I'm trying to find out where somebody is, I don't need to call that person now. I can actually see it. So there's so much that we use it for.
Fantastic. Okay, Sydney, I'm going to dig even deeper into your expertise as a last mile expert. I want you to tell me what emerging technologies or innovations you think are going to shape the future of last mile logistics for food and bev distribution. How should companies prepare for it? And we talked a little bit about AI already. I'm sure that's part of your answer, but give me a real crystal ball kind of exciting look at what the future is going to bring us.
All right, Bob, you knew it was going to come. So, of course, AI and machine learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
AI-powered platforms are going to play a pivotal role in making last-mile distribution significantly more efficient. From identifying more specific service times for customers, existing customers, and potentially new customers that you're acquiring, to customers that qualify for certain levels of service, to even creating routes that might avoid accident-prone areas. AI is going to allow us to combine more data sets, create relationships that we've never thought of before, and sift through data faster and more efficient than we have ever been able to do in the past. I think that it's both a major operational change in the way we'll look at things, as well as being able to just really spot trends and relationships that we didn't think had an impact in the past. The second key area is just really more open platforms for consolidation of information. We're seeing more technology come into the driver's hands, into the vehicles, and into the back office. But the problem today is that all this information is siloed. We don't necessarily, again, understand those relationships between all these different pieces of technologies. It might be cameras, ADAS, driver training and coaching, route accounting, temperature monitoring, all these disparate services. What does it really mean when it comes all together? I believe that it will allow companies to identify issues earlier, whether it's an operational issue as routes are being run or an internal operational issue, but it will identify them faster, resolve them faster, and again, see trends across those data sets that have really been siloed in the past. In the tactical near term, I think that B2C engagement technology is rushing into the B2B space. What does that mean? I'm talking about those proactive notifications or customer order journey tracking, letting people know their order's been scheduled, when it's going to come, the time frame it's going to arrive in, letting people know that it's 5 minutes away from the delivery, from the driver arriving at their front door. We all experience that today in a B2C environment, and now the B2B environment's demanding that as well. Labor is becoming tighter. People need to know exactly when their delivery is coming to the back door, because they've got to free up people from the front of the house in order to receive that product, right? The other is, people really moving from very traditional static or standard routing to more of a hybrid routing model, right? They can't do as they've done in the past. They have to start to service customers differently. So as, companies open and close, we've seen record movements in businesses opening and closing right now, right, over the last several years. Now companies like the beverage distributors have to start thinking about, how am I going to route differently in order to make sure that I take care of the most important customers first, and then dynamically fill in some of these other customers behind. It's really time for them to take, inventory of the value of their customers and provide them with the corresponding service levels.
Let's not forget, we talked about the value to the retail customer. We talked about the value, obviously, the distributor, such as Pepin, but also the value to the drivers. At a time of driver shortages, it sounds like this is the kind of company a driver really wants to work with. And so be able to keep and retain drivers in such an efficient operation, that's a really good, maybe yet another positive side effect to this whole thing. I want to bring the audience in now. Let's talk about some of the questions that the audience has already submitted, and I'll pepper you guys with some of these. And even as we are answering the ones that have already come in, audience, please do continue to post your questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many of those as we can, time permitting. So I think this question probably goes to John. What advice would you give to other beverage distributors looking to improve their fleet performance with real-time tracking?
I mean, it's essential to everything that we do every day. I don't know how you could operate a company the size that we have as a distributor without it. Honestly, it's it's something that is so key to our daily operations that we use. If you're running a distribution company, you really have to know the efficiencies and the time management. And if you don't have real-time visibility of your people, I don't really think you can honestly answer that question. We basically know to the minute, to the hour, where everyone is at and what's happening around us so that we can adjust to it. Mark, he asked in the questions, are we dynamic, static, or hybrid? Our merchandisers are static. 95% of the stops they have are the same every day. We built it that way so that we could be efficient and know that these stops will get delivered every Monday, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have a 4-day delivery work week, Tuesday through Friday, that helps retain people as well. So we try to do everything as much as we can static, but we do have hybrid and we do have dynamic to adjust for things like Bradley was asking for weather. With the hurricane we had, if we didn't have real-time visibility, I can't imagine how we would have got through it. Trying to get so many trucks out and trying to account for accounts that are closed and open and bounce off of everything that's happening. So for me, you have to have real-time visibility. You can't function without it.
And you can draw a direct line, can you, John, from that capability to the actual reduction of inefficiencies at Pepin? You've
Absolutely.
Seen that?
When I first came to Pepin, I was in charge of merchandising. We did not have any way to track our merchandisers. They were getting paid by the hour, and we would have accounts saying, "I don't see your merchandiser," and they would say, "I'm in the parking lot." So for me personally, I would be able to see, yeah, he's actually in the parking lot. I would know how many hours that person is working. Not to say anyone's dishonest or whatever, but with Green Mile and Descartes, I can actually see where they're at in the store. I can see the path they took within the store. I can see how long they were in the parking lot. I can see how many accounts. I call it Jesus view. So yes, you will not have inefficiencies with what we're using because every person is visible to you. Every delivery is visible to you. There's just really no way to not see what's going on. So efficiencies, if you really want to minimize them, you have that ability. It's all data driven. It's all right there for you. If you've got geofences put in, which is what we do for every account, you know exactly when they break that parking lot and you know exactly when they leave. So you'll see service times and the data is amazing. It really is.
Thank you. This questioner is asking, can you give me an example of an issue that may come up that more holistic data can help us overcome? How about Cindy from a Descartes standpoint? Can you help that questioner out?
Sure. I mean, to me, holistic data is having the route plan and then understanding how that route plan has been executed. And then, of course, like John talked about, grabbing the service times, right? When did I break that geofence for arriving at that customer in depart? When you bring all that information together, that's when you start to see where the operational inefficiencies are, or even the operational efficiencies, right? So I start to understand, do I have a customer location problem because I can't access the dock? Do I have a driver challenge because they may not be as fast as some of the other drivers, or they don't know the geography of the area, so they're making wrong turns, or do I have an equipment problem, right? Because I'm putting the wrong product on the wrong piece of equipment. So I think that's, the key thing there is looking at all the data pieces and then saying, what is it telling me? And sometimes the data story isn't really apparent in the beginning, and you have to kind of suss through it a little bit more. But I think that, some of the real solid examples are updating customer service times, getting the right understanding with the right service time, understanding the right arrival and departure times or time windows for our customer based upon collecting that information, and then, of course, driver management and productivity.
Nick, can you speak to that from the standpoint of the beverage industry specifically? Any issues that more holistic data can help us overcome?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I believe that what I typically find in the beverage industry, that everything that Cindy discussed is usually tribal knowledge based. And what this is really doing is taking the tribal knowledge information that we all know is being used in the operations, and turns it into factual data that you can now leverage and harness, right? So that could be anything from when you're starting to do your routing, right? Because if you don't have great data when you're starting to route, you're going to build bad route plans that are not attainable for your actual drivers to achieve. And then it also builds the what I would say is the factual conversation for a coaching perspective, right? So whenever you're having a conversation with, say, the sales team or the merchandising team or the delivery team, the collecting the data and collecting it clean is going to be able to provide you with those factual based conversations instead of the what I would say is like I think conversations that aren't factual. And now you know exactly where you want to guide these conversations with your team to drive better performance and efficiencies.
Question for John. I think we might have answered this, John. Tell me, it says, are you running dynamic, static, or hybrid routes? You did talk about hybrid, or is it a combination of all the above? What's the deal?
I actually have Sean sitting next to me. He's the operations guy. He's the real brains of the company. I'm just the face. But no, we mostly run static. It's about 90 to 95% static. But what's on bulk because they don't change too often. But the other ones are dynamic. 80%. So 80%
static and 20% dynamic.
Okay. Yep. So we do a mix of everything because, like you said, every day is you run into different challenges and you run into different things. So I don't know if you could run 100% static. For the most part, bulk is static. But again, we have some deliveries that weren't able to be made the day before. We've got to throw them on an off day. We have some accounts that may be closed or something happened like the hurricane. So we have to really adjust for the situation at hand. Obviously, static is the best situation, but you have to be flexible and you have to do, what you need to do to get the deliveries out there. So that's essentially what we do. It's kind of a mix of all three.
You cited the hurricane, and the next question specifically asks about it. And some of it's been answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This questioner says, I just returned from Tampa. What are some risks you run into, such as traffic, weather, et cetera, that might change your routes and schedules both short and long term? And how did you handle or are still handling the last hurricane? You did allude to it just now. Do you have more you want to say about that, John? Or maybe have Descartes also chime in?
Well, I think one of the biggest risks for me was being fat and getting sunburned. But from a delivery aspect and an operational aspect, we had so many territories that didn't have power, that were shut down, that weren't able to open. And this is going on for weeks and flooding in a lot of accounts. So we really had to be proactive, send our sales force out there, send our supervisors out there, send basically the whole company to say, okay, who can receive deliveries, who can't, who's operational, who's not. And then we really had to adjust our routes on the fly. And that's where Green Mile was great because then we could look at, different routing in the past and what made sense. And a lot of it was really honest. It was stressful. And we knew that you can't just automatically send beer out and hope that they're open. So that's where the communication came in.
We had flexibility, 4-day work week.
And we had flexibility with the 4-day work week to where we could adjust for what we needed. I think our operational team did an amazing job putting the right amount of beer on the trucks and getting everything delivered. And the nice thing is, we talked about visibility, is we knew, what trucks were coming back so that we could reload and send them back out. We knew what trucks were running behind because of traffic and redirectional routes. So, it was key to have that visibility, and it definitely helped us a lot.
Well, Cindy, for that matter, how's the Descartes solution designed to respond to these huge weather events, which are not predictable and yet inevitable? Is it just part of the whole package, or is there something specific about the solution that makes it particularly appropriate to be able to deal with those kind of events?
It's really the flexibility of the application, right? So, as we start to look at, turning things kind of on and off is the way I would describe it in simple layman's terms. But being able to look at, hey, we know that we're not going to send routes to the north because of the devastation that might have happened in the north end of the city. Being able to redeploy those resources quickly and accurately is really helpful. We also bring in traffic feeds and some other things, looking at both historical traffic as well as real-time traffic out.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm also wondering in a general sense, and maybe you could each address this. We talked about real-time visibility as this thing that just kind of works across the entire system. But where in your experience does visibility mostly tend to break down if you can identify a particular place where that happens? So start with you, Cindy, and ask the others as well what they see as to the real risks of visibility not working out.
Wow, that's a tough one to answer, I think, sometimes, because I think that
Yeah.
once you've got your visibility plan in place, it works incredibly well. I think that there's always the visibility depends on other pieces of technology, right? So we're depending on cellular service, we're depending on tablets, we're depending on mobile devices. So if, someone's decided that they're going to pull the SIM card and you don't have connectivity, that could be one of the spots where visibility really breaks down. And that's really the operational piece of visibility. The tech has gotten so good that I often think there's not a lot of breakdowns today.
No. John, is there within your organization, with all the different links and all the different parties that have to play nice together in order to make this work, is there a particular place where visibility is more of an issue?
Because we're covering 80 square miles and stuff, sometimes you do lose signal and sometimes you may not hit a certain geofence. So there is a technology piece that once in a while it'll show that there are 3 accounts behind, but they have hit those 3 accounts. So there is that technology every once in a blue moon, but overall it's that's where you communicate and you say, hey, I see your 3 accounts behind. No, I actually hit those, and then you can change it. So there is the technology piece and the the Wi-Fi signal. Sometimes if you're in coolers, you may lose signal. Sometimes depending on what device you're using, whether it's an iPad or a phone. But overall, it's mostly a training thing where you log in, you log out, you refresh, get outside the store. So for the most part, it's a simple fix. It's not a huge deal, but the biggest thing is, that's why we have supervisors. That's why we have managers to make that phone call and say, hey, I'm showing you've been at that stop for 3 hours. Is everything okay? No, I've already left. It just didn't pick up the
Right.
me leaving it. So those are the biggest things. I mean, it's technology driven, but you're going to have some hiccups here and there.
Here's a question that I'd like to see answered by both the practitioner and the vendor. Maybe I'll start with you in your real world experience, John, and then talk to either Sydney or Nick about this. But the question is, how long does it take to implement the system? Questioner says, seems like the more the data gets integrated, the longer it would take. Did you implement in certain phases? And if so, what goes in first?
Yeah, so when we brought Descartes into our house, there is a lot of legwork where you're putting in the geofences and you're building your base. They were great as far as helping with training of your personnel, showing them how to use the app, showing them what they need to do on a daily basis. That's key. It's good information in, good information out. So as you go to different departments, you want to meet with that department and train them for what it is that they're going to be using it for. As far as report building and stuff, they were awesome. I went to them and I said, this is the information I want every day. And they built my reports and showed me how to extract the information. It all comes out in Excel, so I can manipulate it the way I want. So it's honestly just starting that foundation of getting the proper maps, getting all the geofences in, getting the account base in, getting all the information in, which honestly they were incredibly great as far as helping do all that, because you really have it all on hand. It's just how do you dump it into what you need? And it was a simple process. And for us, it's just retraining and making sure everyone's doing the right thing now. I've only got to call a few people every day to log in. They already know if I'm calling them, that's why. So it's just a matter of getting everyone on board. And once they get on board, everyone sees the asset it is.
Cindy, does implementation vary from customer to customer, or is there a general rule that we could say it tends to take this long to implement this system?
Bob, I'm going to have to throw that one over to Nick. He's got better information than I do.
Especially in beverage too, Nick. So go ahead and tell me what you think.
Yeah, and like if I was to put a time frame on this, as far as the complexity of the operations obviously drives that timeline. But what we typically see is under 90 days, you are up and running and successful with the solution, is what I would say, Bob. Now, what happens typically is that once we've actually done the implementation and finalized and gave the keys to the tool itself, what typically happens is about 6 to 9 months later, they start to realize what they're able to collect and what they're able to do with the solution. And then they typically come back to us and say, hey, we're trying to actually drive a different efficiency lever over here. How can we enable this within our solution? Or maybe it's a report that you can generate for us so we can actually start to leverage this historical information or real-time information to drive better efficiencies. But short answer, under 90 days is what I would say, that you're up and running.
Okay, implementation time is one thing, but this questioner wants to know what type of ROI, John, you get out of routing software. When does the investment pay itself back?
I mean, for a person who was on a truck for 20 years, if my route wasn't routed correctly and I was running in circles and working a 14-hour day and not knowing who's open and who's closed, I would quit. So for me, the return on investment, also as a merchandiser, if I'm standing around waiting for deliveries, getting yelled at by a receiver going, when's your truck getting here? The return on investment is honestly, it's a better run company. Everything is routed. Everything is, efficient for the most part. You just have happier people when you know where you're going and what time they're open, and you know how many cases you can put on a truck. It's just a smoother process all the way around. So it basically, it's kind of like it pays for itself. If you didn't have it, can you imagine the time you would waste just trying to figure out what's going on throughout the day? And when you're doing 500 plus stops and you've got merchandisers, line cleaners, sales, delivery, I couldn't imagine not having it. It's one of those things where me personally, when I came to Pepin, I wanted it because I saw how well it worked in other companies. So it was one of those things for me as a merchandising director. I had to have it just because I wanted my guys to work a less stressful day. I wanted them to have a static route as far as here's your stops for the day. And I wanted them to know how many cases. And that's the nice thing about the system as well, as I can tell you how many cases you have for the day. I can tell you how many cases are beer. I can tell you how many cases are NAs, so that it's going to be a longer day or a shorter day and you can plan your day. It's a great tool to have just from a planning aspect.
Yeah. As with the implementation of any effective new technology, at some point you find yourself asking, how the heck did we ever get by without this in the past?
Absolutely.
So it's interesting. Hey, well, listen, guys, thank you so much for your fantastic insights, and audience for your great questions. Unfortunately, I am the bearer of bad news here, and that is that we are just about out of time. We have time for one final question, but I'm going to ask each of you to chime in on it, starting with you, John. Here it goes. What is one key takeaway that you would offer to distributors who are looking to improve their fleet efficiency?
You've got to have something that has the visibility and the routing ability and the data to do everything that you want to do every day. The more data you have, the more visibility you have, the more knowledge you have. It just helps everything run so much better for your company. You're saving money on overtime. You're retaining people. Everything runs smoother. It's just something where you have to have it.
Nick, what's your insight on that?
Yeah, I think you need to have an honest conversation as far as how fragmented your operations is from a data and performance management standpoint. I think, once you start having those holistic conversations, you're going to start to see, where our route inefficiencies underlying.
And Sydney, I'll give you the last word. Your one key takeaway.
So I'm gonna go back to consolidation here. You would really need to be implementing proactive planning strategies as a result of collecting execution of that real-time visibility. It's going to become more and more important, and you need to do it more frequently, as we expect again to see lots of movement around businesses opening, closing, and consolidating. This probably means you're going to have to do seasonal reroutes more often so that routes stay more efficient, or even move to a more dynamic routing process, which is going to require better management of customer data. So start to get your customer data in order, and then start to think about how moving to a more dynamic process might affect your business from a service, customer, and driver perspective. If you work through that process, you'll be ahead. I always like to say, plan, execute, engage, improve.
This has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for these insights into the challenges that distributors are facing today and this solution that can really help them meet those challenges. I want to thank you very much, Sydney, John, and Nick, for your participation, and audience as well for showing up and for your great questions too. Here is something that we are offering a white paper for our audience. You can get Pepin Distributing's full success story. You gain additional insights into the results they achieve with Descartes. There's a QR code for you to snap a picture of. If you don't have time to do it in these final few seconds of our presentation, don't worry about it. This will be sent to all attendees of this presentation upon its conclusion, which is right now. So once again, I want to thank Descartes and Pepin and our audience and everybody. Happy holidays to you all, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.